It's very thrilling to be here this morning, and I will point out that we are Jim's Jerky, not Jack Link's, which is a $2.8 billion global behemoth, but we do have big dreams. So my name's Emily, and I'm CEO of our family's company, Jim's Jerky. And I would like to thank MLA very much for having me here today. But it does bring to mind a little story I'd like to share about MLA. If we go back to 2006, Jim's Jerky was 2 years old, and we were incredibly excited to have a trade stand at Beef Week in Rockhampton. And as they do, some MLA staff walked past, and you better believe I pegged their ear. I dragged them in and made them try it all, and they all agreed it was delicious. And so I excitedly started espousing this huge opportunity we saw in premium beef snacking and how I thought it was such a great opportunity. And one of the guys stood back and went, "Yeah, I mean, it's not really beef though, is it? We only focus on fresh." I'm pleased to say, 13 years later, MLA agrees with us that protein snacking is a hugely exciting and innovative space. So much so that beef snacking or red meat snacking was actually mentioned in the recent Red Meat 2030 document as a way to introduce more people to eating Australian beef. So it's a really exciting place to be now. So again, thank you MLA for having us, and Team Gyms are very excited to be part of Red Meat again. So I don't bring that little story up to bring disrepute down on those guys from MLA all those years ago. I think more it shows how we view beef way more broadly than we ever have before, and how we're all excited about bringing new ways of people to enjoy beef. But let's get back to the beginning, where it all started for Jim's Jerky. So founders of Jim's Jerky, Jim and Kathy, my parents, were farmers and graziers, first on the Northern Downs and then in central Queensland. They had a Droughtmaster stud, as well as a small feedlot, and were eventually contracted to supply Woolworths. I think, like most farmers operationally 25, 30 years ago, they were mostly focused on good operational goals, high calving rate, good weight gain, really good looking bulls. But as they started working more and more with Woolworths, they started to understand more about what was good for the end user, the eating quality. So they started to look at not only what was a good-looking bull, but what made a really nice steak. And by the time they finished in the early 2000s, they really understood the quality of the raws they were turning off, which is why Dad found the commercial jerkies available at the time so very, very confounding. They were full of sugar, they were highly processed, and for the market leader, the aforementioned Jack Link's, manufactured in New Zealand. So it surprises a lot of people that before Mum and Dad started on this mad journey, they were not beef jerky eaters. After Mum and Dad sold the place, they were looking for something new to do, and Dad inspected a butcher shop just outside of Toowoomba that was owned by a South African gentleman. And he was also manufacturing some biltong. And as he cut a piece off for Dad to try, he said, "Oh, Australians don't like this." But when Dad first tried it, it was a revelation to him. It was the first time he'd tried a meat snack that he felt truly represented the quality of the raws that we were working with. It was not highly processed. It had a really beefy taste. So in 2004, Mum and Dad bought the butcher shop, closed down the butchering part, and started manufacturing beef jerky, which was a natural progression for a pair of graziers. In their first month, they made 12 kilos of beef jerky. And Dad tells the story of standing on the busy Warrego highway, watching the cars roaring up and down, holding his 12 kilos of jerky, thinking, how the hell am I going to get people to come in and buy this? And anyone in this room who is involved in sales will have had the same question. How can I sell this? Because it's not just good enough to be able to make a really great product. You've also got to be able to sell it and get the value for it. It was not long after they first started that Farm Fest was on, which is a field day just up the road. And a family friend lent Mum a corner of their stand, and she took some jerky along. It was the first time we'd attended a show with jerky. The idea was to get people to sample the jerky and get some feedback on the product to develop the brand. She sold out and made $400. Family was ecstatic, and Jim's Jerky was born. So the lessons we have learnt over the last 15 years is sample, sample, sample. People, particularly 15 years ago, really didn't understand what beef jerky was. But we've found that the more that people can try it and taste it, they actually like it and are much more likely to purchase. If they can't sample, the purchase is really low. Our first Eka was an amazing experience. What do you do with it? Do you eat it? When do you eat it? Do you chew it up and spit it out? For quite a number of years, Jim's worked away nicely. We had a little retail store where we manufacture at Charlton. We had an internet business. Kathy travelled all around Australia sampling at all field days and shows. And we also set up some permanent kiosks in Westfield shopping centres in Brisbane. About 5 years ago, we really began to notice a change. By and large, people had stopped asking what jerky was for. And we started to get greeted by, "Oh my God, I love beef jerky," which was really exciting. What wasn't as exciting was that we weren't the only premium beef jerky brand on the block. Where once we were the only jerky at a show, we were now one of 5. So while we had, it was overall a really positive thing. It meant that consumers were engaging more in protein snacking and they were wanting more of the product. But it also meant that we were coming up against having competitors in the space where before it had really just been us and a couple of others. Up until this point, I had been what most children are to their family business, slave labour. But we had the family talk, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, that it was time for me to come back in. And at that time, we sat down and had a really good look at our business. We saw that we were working in a growth area: protein snacking, better for you snacks, alternative snacks. This is the language that we were starting to work in. We also knew that people were starting to snack differently. They were after something more functional in their snacks. They were looking for something more from what they were putting into their body. Convenience and function, not just an afternoon pick-me-up at 3 o'clock. We also knew that we had to make it easier for people to purchase our product. Now, as most of you will know, beef jerky is not the cheapest snack. So in engaging with our customers, we had to also let them know that what they were buying was worth it. The premium price they were paying was worth it. Speaking as a domestic beef consumer, the cost of our raws have gone up to 30% in the last 2.5 years. So it's really important upon us that we need to show consumers that it's worth the expense. This is what the marketing folks call a value proposition. And, at the time we probably weren't doing a great idea. Royalty likes it, just FYI. So when looking at a packet of jerky hanging on a shelf, in the 7 seconds that people have to make that decision, they have to look at that versus a packet of chips, some peanuts or some Allen's lollies to know that it's worth it. So in also looking at our business and value proposition, we also realised that we had a gym. And Dad, like many other farmers and ex-farmers, is really just a frustrated engineer. So when he had built the drying system that we still use to this day, he'd built it with scale. So around this time, we were starting to get some interest from retailers who were interested in buying our product. So we made the conscious decision to move from a direct selling retail situation to becoming a wholesaler. So we had a more engaged consumer, retailers who were looking to work with us, and a massively underutilised drying system. Voila, right? No. As with all things, it's been easier said than done. And the graziers in entering this place had gone again into totally uncharted waters. And we have lost a lot of skin along the way and probably going to lose a fair bit more as we go on this journey. We have teamed up with a great food industry mind who has helped us understand the FMCG world, which is what we do, fast-moving consumable goods. And we've learnt phrases like trips to mouth and SKUs per store per week. Dad, who previously had never stepped foot in a supermarket, now peruses the aisles with a really well-trained eye and sends me pictures of packaging and products. We are a changed family. We are extremely lucky and excited to be working with some exciting partners in getting our premium Australian beef snacks out there to the wider world. We're currently working with Woolworths in Queensland and with Coles, and we've also just signed up with a national distributor who distributes to petrol and convenience and independent supermarkets all over Australia. So it's really exciting to be getting the premium jerky snack into a much wider audience. Though we also continue to sample and sell at field days and shows all across Australia. And perhaps you've seen Kathy there offering you to try some beef jerky. Because what was true in 2004 remains true now. In order to truly grow, you need to understand your consumer and what your consumer is looking for. So consumer feedback remains central to all that we do. We try new products with them. We try new pack sizes. We see what they are willing to pay for a premium Australian beef snack. By extension, the consumers want to know our story, and they also want to know the story of our beef. Please, please feel sorry for the city consumer who bails Jim up about the type of beef that he uses, because he will talk to them for hours about the importance of the raw product that we use. There is still so much growth to be had in the Australian market. It's still so immature. In terms of protein snacking. In the US, which incredibly is a still growing market, 14% of snacks are beef snacks. For every 100 snacks sold, 14 of them are a packet of jerky. In Australia, we're down around the 2%. But protein sells. If you walk into any petrol store, you'll find the better for you snacks, and they will be full of protein bars and protein bliss balls, which are 35% sugar with a little bit of protein on top. This should keep you up at night. It keeps me up at night. They're in our space with their fake protein. We have the #1 protein and available iron, and we need to shout it from the rooftops and really engage people around the better for you snacking is probably not a big ball of sugar. It's probably something more like good Australian beef in a packet. Luckily, though, we are on board with protein. A 2018 study by Nielsen called The Power of Protein. In Australia, there has been a sales boost of 22.3% of items described as containing protein against 2% of total grocery growth. That means last year, grocery grew 2%, but things that said they had protein in them grew by 22%. That's your yogurt saying they've got protein, that's your muesli bars, and that should also be a lot more beef snacks. The way we eat is changing. We still want to snack. In fact, we snack more than we ever had before, but we're less likely to want to eat your chips and lollies. And so Jim's is excited to be part of that change. And people, despite all the noise about fake meat, still really overwhelmingly trust in Australian producers. Jim's Jerky is incredibly excited what the future holds for meat snacking in Australia. We can continue to be part of the growing process, and as producers, a different way of eating meat is another way to get our product out there. And we're already training up the next generation to keep selling into the beef jerky market. Thank you very much for having me.